Okay, is my screen visible, Chirag and Madhav? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I think good evening, everybody. Let us start the proceeding, and in the course of time, people will keep joining. So, good evening and welcome to another session of Surgical Academia. In fact, as a customary, I just need to introduce the platform to the speaker and the moderator, and the moderator and speaker to the audience. So Surgical Academia is just a platform which was just initiated in the year 2012 with residents of SCB Medical College. Then gradually it included residents of all medical colleges, faculty of all medical colleges of the state. Then it went outside other states, residents and faculties across the country. Many of them they joined. Now there are many international guests and friends, those who have joined, and we were sparingly doing academic activities, but in this pandemic for last 4 months, initially I started a weekly event doing all myself, then thought of roping in friends and colleagues from across the country, and all of them, I'm happy that all of them, they happily agreed to share their wisdom with everybody. So in that process, today we are into another session of this webinar, which will be on liver resection. And I have an excellent speaker and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Chirag Desai. Dr. Chirag is the Chief Consultant and Program Director of GI, HPB and liver transplant surgery in Apollo Hospitals in Ahmedabad. And you can just know that Dr. Chirag Desai is father of liver transplant surgery in the state of Gujarat in India. So in fact, he is the first man who started liver transplant in the state of Gujarat, and he did the first living donor liver transplant, did the first pediatric liver transplant, and he did the first liver transplant without any transfusion in the state of Gujarat. So if it comes to liver transplant, in fact, Chirag is a big name in the state of Gujarat, and obviously he is also a good name in the country as well. So this is Chirag being felicitated in many forums. And I happily had we both were involved in the association activities of Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology and International Hepatopancreaticobiliary Association Indian chapter, where we both were working in the executive committee. So we happen to be friends from for the last decade or so. So it's good to have him. It's a completely family man. So I thank Chirag for accepting my request to present in this forum, and wish all well for you as well as for your family. The moderator for the evening is my younger brother and colleague, Dr. Madhavanand Kar, who is the professor and head of the Department of Surgical Oncology in All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Bhubaneswar in Odisha, in the same place where I am working. Dr. Madhav is an excellent surgical oncologist of repute in the country, and he has tremendous achievement in many fora of surgical oncology. He's a fantastic surgeon. This is where we were together in the inauguration of our modular theaters in AIIMS Bhubaneswar. And we happen to have collaborated sometime in some social activities and some health camps, and doing some good work in the society and contributing in some form. So Madhav is a complete family man. He's a fantastic surgeon, and more than a surgeon, he is an excellent human being. So it's a pleasure to have you, Madhav. Today I'm moderating this session, and I welcome both Dr. Chirag and Dr. Madhav for this wonderful evening that we'll be having, both of you. And without wasting much of time, I hand over the screen and air now to Madhav to progress further.
Good evening, all. Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah, you are audible. You are audible. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Manas, for your kind words. That I'm telling the Manas bhai. And I'll not take much time. This is a very good topic, that is tips and tricks of liver resection.
Stop sharing kar de. Just a minute. I am just stopping sharing. Yeah. Chirag, now you can share your screen.
Yeah, that's I will not take much time. During discussions and in the presentations and the discussions we may discuss, like a few things that I will tell before. Just Chirag, I will give hand up for 1 minute. This is a very good topic. That is the tips and tricks of the liver resection. And this will, I am telling this, I'm a surgical oncologist, early Dr. Manoj told. This liver resection starting from the children to adult with the tribal liver transplant, like from trauma, tumor transplants, so many years in tumor like metastatectomy, hepatic resection, different types of resection like non-anatomical, anatomical, a lot of things we can have the things. That's I just want to hand over to Dr. Chirag to present and not wasting more time here. And in between, you can discuss. And
I think before Chirag starts, I'll request everybody to keep their mic muted and keep posting questions as and when it comes to your mind. And at the end, Dr. Madhav will start moderating with the speaker, and both of them will start sharing, and we can all chip in, and you can be visible and also ask questions. There's absolutely no problem. Yes.
Okay, now Dr. Chirag.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, thank you, Dr. Manas, for giving this opportunity. And I'm really happy to talk on liver resection today. I see a lot of friends in the audience already joined. So the best part of such activities is compared to conferences, here we can talk in detail. And then there is extensive question answer session. So really we can address the topic which really can benefit a lot of people. So today the topic that I have been given is liver resection tips and trick. So I'm going to address these aspects today. So preoperative evaluation, inflow, Gleason's approach, Pringles, anterior approach, outflow, transaction methods, energy sources, staplers, hemostasis, cut surface, and a lot of other surgical agents. So as Professor Bismuth rightly said, a good knowledge of the anatomy is a prerequisite of modern surgery of liver. So liver is extremely vascular organ, has lots of vessels and lots of structures, and there's a lot of variation in its arrangements. Liver has 8 segments, and there is also segment 9, which I'll talk about a little later. Then the way they are numbered is they are numbered in a clockwise manner. So segment 1 is caudate lobe, segment 2, 3 is left lateral, segment 4 is our quadrate lobe, segment 5, 6, 7 is our right lobe, and part of caudate lobe is also known as segment 9 nowadays. So segment 4 is further divided into segment 4A and 4B. And this has importance, especially in the management of carcinoma of gallbladder. This Cantellis line is very important, which is the main fissure, which so there is why is there an echo? Am I audible?
Yes, Dr.
Hello?
Chirag. Yeah.
So I go on. Yeah. So this is the segmental anatomy of liver, and this anatomy of liver, if you understand, then only you can do good liver resection. One has to understand how to read the CT scan also, and this cross-sectional imaging is very important, and you need to be able to identify the segments on the CT scan depending on the level of hepatic vein and portal vein. And caudate lobe is has its extension between the portal vein and hepatic IVC, and it also has a caudate process going on the right side. So when you want to remove the whole segment 1, little later I'll show the video, you have to remove all these 3 components of segment 1, and the part of segment 1 between portal vein and IVC is also known as segment 9. Biliary anatomy has lots of variations, and knowledge of this variation is very important. Hepatic artery usually comes from celiac artery, but there may be accessory right artery from superior mesenteric artery, or accessory left artery from left gastric artery. Portal vein can have different configuration, and this knowledge is very important, and that's why a good quality CT scan is very important before surgery, so we all can have anticipation at the time of surgery. 3 hepatic vein lies in a very particular place. So left lies between segment 2, 3 and 4. The middle hepatic vein lies between segment 4 and 8 and 5, and right hepatic vein lies between segment 5, 8 and 6, 7. So segment 2, 3 is known as left lateral segment. 2, 3 and 4 together is a left surgical lobe. Segment 5 and 8 is right anterior sector, and 6 and 7 are right posterior sector. 5, 6, 7 together make this right surgical lobe. Anatomy of the hilar plate is also very important. This is very crucial part of liver resection, because this is where you get a bile duct, and if the division in this area is not proper, not only there could be bleeding, but there could be injury to the bile duct. So a knowledge of the anatomy of this area is also very, very important. Ruveus sulcus is very inconsistent and different sort of a groove that we see, and we see during laparoscopic cholecystectomy all the time, and that gives us the guide that in the depth of that lies the right pedicle. So when you want to approach the right pedicle, or right anterior or right posterior pedicle, you have to utilize this surgical landmark. Ligamentum venosum, also known as Arenchius ligament, takes you to the common trunk of left and middle hepatic vein. This is very important that you know how to trace this ligament and to reach the crucial area, especially when you are not taking the whole trunk and you are taking only the left hepatic vein. This is the surgical photograph of the same thing. Then next is the umbilical fissure. Umbilical fissure separates segment 2, 3 and segment 4. And when it is lifted, it is segment 2, segment 3 and 4A, 4B pedicles are here. And this is caudate lobe pedicle is also there. So dissection in this area leads to the pedicle and makes the surgery easy. Hepatocaval ligament or IVC ligament or Makuchi ligament is a broad tissue which could be thin membranous to thick tissue with lot of parenchyma, and many times it needs division with stapler, or many times it is divided with Cusa, and if it is thin you can just cut it with the diathermy. And it is very important to be patient in this area and not to hurry, otherwise you may have some bleeding in that area, may damage the underlying IVC or one of the tributaries, and may waste some time. Now, once you have good knowledge of anatomy, you also need to know how to assess these patients preoperatively to make sure that there is good outcome. Assessment of the patient is a core fact, and it's a very important aspect in the overall care of the patient. So the tumor factors that you need to know beforehand are the number of lesions, size of lesions, where about in the liver they are involved, whether it's in one side, two sides, how far they are from the major vessels, whether the vascular involvement is there or not, whether there is thrombosis in the branch of the portal vein or not. Then amongst the liver factor, you have to know what is the underlying status of the liver function, because many of the hepatocellular carcinoma occur in underlying chronic liver disease patients. Some of them have cirrhosis, and you have to know what is the baseline and underlying liver function, and that helps you decide the extent of resection and kind of resection you do to make sure that patient has a favorable outcome in the postoperative period. Then you also have to know the volumes and the expected future liver remnant. This volumetry is extremely important. Amongst the patient factor, you have to know about the patient's comorbidities. It's not just the age that is important. It is the physiological age of the patient which is important. And you have to assess this patient in detail for their cardiopulmonary fitness. Then what is important is the logistic factors, whether the facility is available or not, whether you have a good backup in the ICU available or not, is your nursing staff and the OT staff trained or not, are your equipments properly handled or not, are they taken care properly or not. This is very important because you don't want to start surgery and then your equipment not work properly and then you are stuck. And this is the last thing one should come across. Then the qualitative assessment of the liver is very important. So Child-Pugh score tells you whether it's child's A, B, or C. It is a child's A patient who can undergo surgery. If it is child C, it is a big no, and you have to refer that patient for transplant. If it is child's B, you should try to optimize that patient, improve their function, increase their reserve, improve their overall fitness, and then you try to do the surgery. But many times even the child's B patients are better off with the transplant if the resection needed is the big one. Then another way of assessing the qualitative status of the liver is ICG clearance test. Now this is not widely available, but in some of the centers where they do it, the way it is done, that commercially available dye is diluted into the distilled water and then it is given in a fixed dose. And then the samples are collected every 5 minutes. And at the 15 minutes, you see what is the plasma disappearance rate and what is the retention rate at the end of the 15 minutes. If it is more than 4 to 7%, then this liver is not working properly and you should be careful before going ahead with a major resection. Another important aspect is to quantitatively assess the liver, and that is known as the volumetry. The quantitative assessment should calculate that at the end of the surgery, minimum 30% of the liver should be left behind. And if the quality of liver is not good, if there is cirrhosis, it is better that we have 35–40% of the liver left behind. The volumetry is usually done manually in most of the centers where the fancy softwares are not available, and they are done with the help of tracing. The thickness of the all the sections are very important, and there is fixed way of identifying the estimated volume. So total volume is measured, individual resection values with or without middle hepatic veins are calculated, and if the tumor is too big, the tumor volume is also calculated. But the disadvantage is of this manual method is it is tedious, it is time consuming, it is less accurate than the usual this sophisticated new softwares that are available. So this is how the tracing is done, and this is how you see the volume. Mavis is one of the softwares which is a part of augmented reality. It's a excellent blend of medicine and current technological advancements, and it can be downloaded. You can upload your image. They can produce such brilliant images. All the structures can be color coded, and the tumor can also be identified. And then you have a three-dimensional images. You can identify the number of vessels, size of vessels, distance between the vessels, which all vessels may need reconstruction if it is a donor surgery. All these informations are very, very accurately connected, and that you can get back after all these reconstructions on your iPad or laptop. Median is another software, and many other recent softwares are available, and they all have this sort of a very sophisticated features where they can give you three-dimensional images. You can plan your very complex dissections, and the patients who were considered to be inoperable or borderline operated can be included in surgery, and safe outcome can be given because of this accurate planning. Such three-dimensional images are very important, and that tells you exactly the size of the vessels, number of vessels, distance between the vessels, and all these images are very important. This is the picture showing the presence of inferior hepatic vein. See, this is inferior hepatic vein, which is very sizable. You can't ignore this if it's a donor surgery. Similarly, portal vein images, arterial images, and bile duct images. All these images, when you have in detail preoperatively, you have all the information that is necessary to plan your surgery, and there are no surprises on the table. And such detailed evaluation and evaluation in a multidisciplinary is extremely important. All these images should be available inside the operating room, so that it can be referred to during the surgery if necessary. Now, there are three ways of doing liver resections. One is conventional open surgery, laparoscopic surgery, and robotic surgery. Laparoscopy and robotic surgeries are new, but really getting their way in. They have a significant established role in the resectional surgeries. However, in donor surgery, they are still trying to have established role. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of these individual techniques, and I'm just going to talk about the general principles which remain same in all these techniques. Irrespective of whether you do open laparoscopy or robotic surgery, the care that you take and the kind of resection you do and the way you deal with each structure remains the same. Only the modality that you use to do these things differs. So laparoscopic resection or the minimal invasive resection has advantage of less blood loss, shorter hospital stay, and possible fewer complication. However, it is technically demanding, it is restricted space, and there is no tactile sensation. If there is bleeding, then it can really bleed before you can open. So you have to have a very good team and good training and good exposure and experience of open surgery before you embark onto either laparoscopic or a robotic surgery. Now, when the surgical excision is done, there are two types of resection. One is non-anatomical resection and the anatomical resection. And the major liver resection used to have a mortality of as high as 5 to 10%, but recently, because of sophisticated techniques, good planning, and better expertise and good infrastructure and better ICU backup, now this mortality has gone down to 1 to 2% in most high volume centers. Even the liver resection, even the major liver resection, even central liver resection can be done without blood transfusion in some of the selected cases. If we talk about the nomenclature, if you remove the part of the liver which corresponds to segments or sectors or particular anatomical part of the liver, they are called anatomical resections, and others are wedge resections or the non-anatomical resections. So when you remove segment 2, 3, and 4, it is left hepatectomy. When you remove 5, 6, 7, 8, it is right hepatectomy. When you remove 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, everything on the left side, right side of the falciform ligament, it is extended right hepatectomy. The part on the left side of the falciform ligament is left lateral sectionectomy. These three sectors, if you remove, it is called left trisectionectomy, and this is right posterior sectionectomy. Similarly, a monosegmental resections, central liver resection usually means either section 4, segments 4, 5, or 8, or only 5 and 8 is known as anterior, right anterior sectorectomy, and segment 4 resection is known as segment 4 resection. So all these various anatomical resections are planned before surgeries, and usually there should not be a need to change on table. Now, this is the example of anatomical resection. This patient had a tumor in the left lateral segment, and the patient had This is the operative picture, and patient had left lateral segmentectomy. This is the tumor, and this is the negative margin. This is the left hepatic vein showing no tumor there. And now this is the example of the non-anatomical wedge resection. This is the hepatitis B patient with segment 6 tumor. It's a pedunculated tumor. There was a diaphragm involved. However, diaphragm, the wedge of the section of diaphragm has been removed with it, and then you do the large wedge resection. It's a non-cirrhotic liver, and it's removed. Now, what are the different components of liver resection? So, these are the various incisions used for liver resection, and most commonly used one is the hockey stick incision or the inverted L-shaped incision. However, if it's a large tumor or the excess is needed or the patient is very hefty, you may need either Mercedes-Benz incision or inverted T-shaped incision. So these are the various types of incision that is needed. Now, if you close these wounds properly, then apart from cosmesis, the morbidity is not very different. Usually, in most right hepatectomies, incision, but if the patient is thin, I prefer J-shaped incision, or in a donor surgery, we prefer J-shaped incision. Large tumor or the excess is difficult, we use one of these two incision. But and all the important structure is very, and by looking at the CT scan, you should be able to have an idea what kind of difficulty you have with this particular patient, because you have a patient in front of you, and depending on the build of the patient, you decide the best incision. Then this is the various retractors. This is very, very crucial. You need to have excellent retractor system. So the commonly used ones are the Thompson and the Omnitrack retractor, or the Brooke-Poulter is used by some, but I find is very cumbersome and it comes in the way. So most commonly we use the Thompson retractor. It is very versatile and excellent exposure it gives, and the blades are very sturdy, and it's very easy to adjust and increase or decrease the retraction. It has got a lot of blades and various attachments available. Even the pediatric blades are available. Now, this is the position that we use at the time of the transection of the liver to prevent the air embolism. So usually patient is flat, but if necessary, you can put patient in the Trendelenburg position, and this helps you prevent the air embolism. The first thing after exploration of the abdomen that you do is mobilize the right lobe of the liver, if we talk about the right hepatectomy. And when you do the mobilization of the right lobe of the liver, you expose the IVC and you take small tributaries in the IVC. So this is a small video showing multiple tributaries that are taken care of, and it is something where you need to be very patient, irrespective of how small they look. They are directly from IVC, so you have to secure them properly. You use either ligatures, transfixation, or clips, depending on your preferences. And this separates and helps you lift the liver of IVC. And this also gives you an access towards the lower part of the lower edge of the right hepatic vein, which gives you access, and then you can loop the right hepatic vein. Now, once that is done, now you focus your attention to the inflow. Now, there are two ways to deal with your inflow. Either you take the entire Glisolian pedicle, which is a sheath covering all the portal structures, and you take care of the whole of the pedicle outside the sheath, and then you put a snugger on it, and that helps you demarcate the line. So this is known as Glisonian approach. And another method is you dissect out individual structures, the bile duct, the hepatic artery branch, and the branch of the portal vein, and you loop them individually and deal with and block them and apply bulldog individually to have the line of demarcation. So my preference is, if the after lowering the hilar plate, if I can go around the pedicle easily, then I use the glycerin pedicle. But if I see that the excess all the round is not clear and there is a possibility of bleeding, then obviously you have to withdraw and dissect individual structures, identify portal vein and hepatic artery, and then proceed. So after dissecting the portal vein and hepatic artery, the snugger is applied here on the portal vein and the bulldog on the hepatic artery, and that helps you define the line of demarcation. And there is a reverse question mark shape of line of demarcation that you usually get when you are trying to do the resection in the division in the Cantellis line. So this is the, and in Gleasonian approach, you can have access to even the right anterior and posterior pedicles also. Now, once you have defined the line of demarcation, the next most important thing is to do the transection of the liver parenchyma. And for that, you have various options. Now, the good old technique is the caliclysis method or finger fracture method or crush and clamp method. This is the same thing, where you just with very hefty artery forceps divide the parenchyma, and whatever stands out, you just clip it or ligate it or suture it. It is little crude but very quick. But the most commonly used techniques nowadays are harmonic scalpel, CUSA, water jet, and very, very uncommonly used, but still a technique which has been talked about quite a bit a few years back is a Habib probe using the radio frequency energy. So these are the various tools by which you can divide the hepatic parenchyma. So this is CUSA, this is water jet, this is harmonic scalpel. You can even divide with staplers, and clamp, crush, finger fracture, or the caliclysis method. So there are the various methods. When you use staplers, you can use staplers to divide the parenchyma or take care of the pedicles. This is the inflow and this is the outflow. So these are the various uses, and this is the matter of convenience and comfort. But I use staplers occasionally on the hepatic vein. Otherwise, in most of the division, I use CUSA or a harmonic scalpel. And for the inflow, I usually individually transfix the or the suture the pedicle structure. So this is the systemic review which was published a few years back comparing different transaction methods, and they looked at 556 patients, and they concluded that when you compare most of the techniques, there is hardly any difference as far as the morbidity, mortality, difference in the markers of ischemia or liver injury or ICU stay or hospital stay. So all these parameters are more or less same. But when you compare CUSA and clamp crush method, the clamp crush method is quicker, cheaper, and has less blood transfusion, but is less neat. The cut surface, you may not have as smooth as that you get in CUSA, and hence it is something which has lost its popularity in most of the transplant setups because the CUSA is available. The CUSA is the most commonly used, CUSA or the water jet are the most commonly used devices for the transaction of the hepatic parenchyma. Then in most transplant units, this is available. This is a blood and fluid warming and rapid transfusion system. This is known as level 1 rapid transfusion system. It warms the fluid and transfuses in a very rapid way. Though this is not mandatory, if it is available, and it is very handy for the anesthetist. And during resections, especially in thoracics, if you have an access to thromboelastogram, it is helpful for the anesthetist to deal with the blood products, especially if it's a very complex resection where there is some oozing or bleeding and you are likely to use more blood transfusions. Then how do you deal with the outflow? That is, if we talk about right hepatic vein, in case of right hepatic hepatectomy, or a left and the middle hepatic trunk in case of the left hepatectomy. So they can be either dealt within the parenchyma or outside the parenchyma. So this is extra hepatic or outside parenchyma. So it is looped outside the liver and it is dealt there. And here it shows that you don't deal with it outside the parenchyma, and you come across it during the division of the parenchyma, and you deal with them within the parenchyma. So this is how you create a tunnel from above and below and dissect the right hepatic vein. It is very important that you don't poke anything, and gradually if you dissect, this is a relatively avascular plane, and usually you get a plane. Usually you put either umbilical tape or the sling. Similarly, middle hepatic vein, it is being looped within the parenchyma, and then you decide at what level you want to divide it. Then how do you deal with the cut surface to take care of the hemostasis and to take care of the bile leak? Now for the hemostasis, the most important is to take care of most of the vessels during the division, apply clips liberally. Larger vessels are sutured or transfixed, or apply Hem-o-lok clips. If there is oozing, apply diathermy or argon laser, apply Surgisil, Tisil, Flosil, Tacrosil. All these newer substances are available which you can apply there, and it helps you achieve. But these all things are not substitute to good surgical technique. If your surgical technique is good, usually the bleeding stops. You ask your anesthetist to maintain the optimal blood pressure and good CVP level, and this will take care of your oozing. And for bile leak, so this is the application of the Surgisil on the cut surface before you finish the surgery. The bile leak I'll talk about a little later. Now, to prevent bleeding, you have various options. So what anesthetists can do for you? They can maintain low CVP with the help of volume, phlebotomy, in very occasional case, vasodilatation and diuresis. So these are the ways you use to lower the CVP. It is maintained between 2 to 5. It is very important that it is not too low to reduce the perfusion of the kidney and produce problems of too low a perfusion. But 2 to 5 CVP level is very comfortable one. You can use, they can use even the pharmacological agents, antifibrinolytics if necessary. They may use it to take care of the bleeding, especially in cirrhotics. And surgically, what you can do is you can either use the Pringles maneuver, selective or a complete, intermittent or continuous. And you use good surgical techniques to divide the liver parenchyma and use the topical hemostatic agents. Now, on the cut surface, to identify bile leak, there are two ways. You put a dry, clean gauze piece on the surface, apply Bulldog on the bile duct, let the back pressure build up, and then check whether there is staining on the gauze piece or not. And if there is gauze staining, then that area you underrun. Another way is to cannulate the cystic duct with a small infant feeding tube, and then apply Bulldog clamp at the lower end of the bile duct, and then put diluted methylene blue and see if there is staining at the cut surface. So these are the two different ways of checking bile leak. And if there is some leak identified, you do the suturing. Now, these are a few pictures of donor surgery. So it's an epitome of liver resection, because the most perfection that is needed is for the donor hepatectomy. So the biopsy is taken on table to confirm the steatosis level as a protocol. Then you do the cholecystectomy, cannulate the cystic duct, do the cholangiogram, mobilize the right lobe of the liver, loop the inferior hepatic veins as well as right hepatic veins, measure the distances which will help you then deal with the inflow, identify the line of demarcation. Then you mark the line of division with the help of CUSA. Then you open the book and deal with the vessels that you come across, and all this segment 5 and segment 8 vessels you mark. And then gradually you go down, put a tube behind the liver, lift the liver above the IVC. That helps you give the counter traction, and that helps liver fall apart, and that helps and that increases the efficacy of the CUSA also. And gradually you finish your division, and at the end, then carefully you deal with the hilar plate and divide the bile duct. If necessary, you may do one more cholangiogram at this stage. So these are the hilar structures that have been identified, and these are the markers put for the cholangiogram, and then the division is done. This is the right hepatectomy specimen for the tumor. This is the photograph of the central anatomical liver resection. Segment 5, 8 and segment 4 are removed for large gist, metastatic gist in the liver. This is the example of non-anatomical liver resection. This is the large FNH in segment 6. So a wedge resection was done. This is the wedge resection for carcinoma gallbladder. Segment 4B and segment 5 are removed, along with the radical cholecystectomy and lymphadenectomy in the hilum. Now, one important aspect is liver resection in cirrhotics. Now, high morbidity and mortality in cirrhotics is because of higher incidence of bleeding and higher incidence of liver failure. So bleeding is due to portal hypertension, cholesterol, associated hypersplenism, coagulopathy, neovascular pattern, and liver failure is because of impaired liver function because of underlying cirrhosis, limited ability to regenerate, so regeneration may be slow, and if it may be very relevant in case of major hepatectomy, and effect of hepatic ischemia if you have used prolonged inflow occlusion. So the challenges that we face in cirrhotic is the interpretation, even with intraoperative ultrasound, at times may be difficult because of regenerative nodules. The duration of the inflow that you can use is slightly lesser compared to normal liver because cirrhotic liver may not tolerate it well. Though as long as up to total cumulative 60 minutes you can use, but the lesser the better. And the techniques of inflow occlusions may be a little difficult because of the atrophy hypertrophy complex at the porta because of cirrhosis, associated collaterals making it little difficult, and difficult inflow and outflow because of collaterals and cirrhosis. So assessment is difficult, technique is difficult. Portal vein embolization to augment the well volume is difficult because the response is less. The morbidity and mortality hence is higher, and so if you think that the patient is slightly high risk, it is better to subject this patient for transplant rather than taking the chance of liver resection. So if you compare morbidity and mortality in cirrhotic and normal liver, in meta-analysis it has been found that the morbidity is almost double in cirrhotic and mortality is almost 3 to 4 times more in cirrhotics compared to normal liver patients. Now, so this we talked about the usual routine liver resection, which is fine in most occasions. Now, at times you need adjuncts to make it more versatile, safer, and to benefit those patients who are otherwise may be considered unsuitable for surgery. So downstaging reduces the size of the tumor and then makes it operable. Preoperative portal vein embolization augments the volume of future liver remnant, and that's how makes the impossible surgery possible. and hence you may do, say, and this is usually used in case of cholangiocarcinoma or hyalocholangiocarcinoma, where you may have to do extended right hepatectomy and the volume of the left lateral segment you want to augment, just for an example. Similarly, intraoperative ultrasound is something which is very important. With good preoperative imaging, in most cases, it may not be necessary, but it helps you identify extra nodules, locate the important vascular landmarks, and it can be used in minimal invasive surgery as well as open surgery. These are the pictures of intraoperative ultrasound. This is the lesion which was identified, and these are the various vascular structures, then distance of tumor from the middle hepatic vein. And this is the probe of the open surgery. This is the probe of the laparoscopic surgery. The Doppler is also very important, and especially when you have done a resection of the vessel or the stump of the portal vein that you have closed and you are not happy with the lie. You may want to do Doppler to see the flow pattern and all, and if necessary, you may revise your suture line to avoid the torque and any twisting and turning to avoid post-operative complications. Intraoperative ultrasounds are very important, not only for the identification of the lesions, but it also helps you identify important vascular pedicles and structures. There are centers which use segmental resections with the use of intraoperative ultrasound. They identify the pedicles, inject the dye into it, and then you remove that particular segment after delineating it. These are the various vasculatures, and this is the basis of using inflow, outflow occlusion of the vascular structures, or even total vascular exclusion in selected patients to reduce the bleeding and make this surgical resection feasible. So the Pringles maneuver is the occlusion of the whole of the inflow. It could be either continuous or intermittent. The disadvantage of the continuous Pringles is insufficient control of bleeding, thus because of the back pressure. Then splanchnic congestion of the gut is also a cause of concern, especially if it continues for a very long time. It produces more ischemic injury. There is no ischemia reperfusion, and this is something which is not commonly used. Most commonly used is the 15 minutes occlusion and 5 minutes reperfusion. 4 such sets, so 60 minutes of cumulative Pringles is very, very safe and can be done even in child's a cirrhotic patient, and has been studied by and published by Professor Bill Getty also, and it is something which is commonly used. And I also use intermittent Pringles, and I never use the continuous Pringles. Ischemia preconditioning is also a concept, and this is something to justify why intermittent is better than continuous. The Pringles can be even selective also, which is one of the pedicles can also be isolated, and then the Pringles is applied. When you do central liver resection, you use selective inflow occlusion one after other on 2 sides. The advantage is the demarcation of the limits of the resection occurs. Then it prevents the ischemic injury to the remnant liver, absence of the splanchnic congestion and hemodynamic disturbances, and prevents the prolonged ischemia, especially in the chronic liver disease patients. So this is the total Pringles, and this is how it is used. You use either clamp, directly clamp is used, but it may traumatize it. So to avoid it, the snugger is the most commonly used way of using Pringles. Your anesthetic is very important to keep an eye on the timer, and when there are 12 minutes, you are given warning that 3 minutes left. And after 15 minutes, you release the Pringles for 5 minutes, and then you can repeat it if necessary. This is kind of line of demarcation you get if you have a selective Pringles. And when you apply selective Pringle on either side, you can demarcate both the sides to remove the central liver resection. Total vascular exclusion at times is needed for very large tumors, very close to IVCs, or tumor which is too huge and you want complete want to obstruct the blood supply, but it is not without hemodynamic instability, and many patients don't tolerate it. So there are various ways of doing a total vascular exclusion. This is the diagrammatic picture of showing occlusion of the supra and infrahepatic IVC as well as the inflow occlusion like Pringles. And these are the various permutation and combination where there are options of preserving IVC flow and still you have occlusion of the hepatic veins and have control on the back bleeding. So these are the various way of doing it. And with experience of liver transplant, if at all the people would maintain the IVC blood flow and then obstruct the retrocaval, expose the retrohepatic cava and occlude all the three hepatic veins stump, and that's how you prevent the backflow bleeding. So these are the various hemodynamic responses that occurs when you do total vascular exclusion. You have to have an extremely competent surgical team and very good anesthesia team if you want to embark onto this. This is something which is not routinely done, and I myself does not have too much of experience of using total vascular exclusion, but I have included here just for the sake of presentation. Anesthesia considerations are also very important. Cardiac output monitoring, fluid infusion device, as well as use of vasopressors as and when needed, and intolerance to total vascular exclusion in 10 to 20% makes it a non-versatile technique. Another important aspect of liver resection, especially in a huge tumor, where when you try to mobilize the liver with such large tumor, there are problems of that technique, and that's where you use anterior approach. So conventionally, we mobilize the right lobe and then deal with the inflow outflow and then divide the liver. However, in anterior approach, first you take care of inflow and outflow, inflow, decide the line of demarcation, divide the parenchyma, and then take care of the outflow, and at the end you mobilize the liver. So conventional approach, right hepatectomy is completely mobilization of the right liver with the right hepatic vein controlled outside the liver before parenchymal transection. Okay, so what are the disadvantages, especially where the lesion is very large? There may be more bleeding, there may be hemodynamic instability, the tumor metastasis may occur because of the too much manipulation of the large tumor. Tumor may rupture, and the liver ischemia may occur because of the torque at the porta, especially the residual liver may get affected.
Stop sharing, yeah.
Okay. So this is the diagrammatic representation of maneuver. Yes.
Your screen is not visible now. Share here.
I think, Chirag, you need to share your screen again, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's coming up now. It's coming up. It's coming up. Yeah. Make it full screen. Yeah, fine.
Okay. So anterior approach is for such large tumors, and you divide the parenchyma first and then mobilize the liver. This is the diagrammatic presentation. This is how you go, and this is how you put a sling or a tube to lift the liver. So this is the avascular plane that we take care and take the advantage of. and smooth and gentle movements, hydrodissection, and use of the 14 French nasogastric tube is the key. And you dissect from above and below, create this plane, and try to put a tube there, and then lift the liver, and then divide the parenchyma. So anterior approach is a very, very useful way of doing liver resection, especially if you have a huge right-sided tumor like this. So this is how the tube is passed and the liver is divided. This is the another example of hanging maneuver. Hanging maneuver gives a very good counter traction, and it's very important for such huge liver tumors. And then at the end, the liver, the right hepatic vein is dealt with, and then the liver is separated from the diaphragm at the end. So there is no oncological problems of rupture of the tumor or anything like that. So the advantage of anterior approach is it decreases intraoperative blood loss and transfusion requirements. The mobilization of the right liver is easier after parenchymal transection, even for the large tumors. There is minimal manipulation of the tumor, better preservation of the postoperative liver function, better control of bleeding, and protection of the IVC. But the disadvantage, it is technically demanding and needs experience, and at times you may not be able to develop a plane. So this is the review comparing both the approaches. These are the other papers showing the superiority of anterior approach over conventional, even in laparoscopic resection also. And the anterior approach is superior in this various aspects: morbidity, mortality, operating time, recurrence, especially in a large tumors on the right side. Now, one more thing before I conclude, that is the ICG in liver resection. This is something which is coming up in a big way, and it requires a special camera and the whole system. The various companies have it, and laparoscopy as well as open systems are there, and it has this white mode and ICG mode. The use in liver resection is better appreciate the bile ducts, identification of the bile leakage along the resection line, identifies the undetected lesions, better clearance of margin, vascularity of the parenchyma, and the segmental anatomy. So if you want to use it to identify lesion, you have to use it a couple of days before. If you want to use it to identify biliary anatomy, you have to use about an hour ago. And if you want to use it to identify segmental anatomy, you have to use it on table. Yeah. So you occlude the pedicle that you are going to remove, and then you give ICG. So the whole liver is illuminized, and there is a negative part is the part that you need to remove, and you demarcate that part and remove that much of liver. So that's how it is used. So conventional cholangiogram versus ICG. So there are pros and cons. So obviously you are not using dye, and incidence of cholangitis, if at all, is very less in case of ICG. However, for ICG, you need a good availability of this equipments, and it has got cost along with it. So disadvantage of ICG is it's the floating stone within the bile may be missed and needs special equipment. And the disadvantage of IOC is invasive, needs cannulation, possible duct injury while doing this. Obviously, you need to do the radiation and need skill. So this is how the ICG is used to divide the point of division. So either you put a marker here and do the cholangiogram, or you just use ICG and then divide the bile duct. And this is being used increasingly in donor surgeries in departments where this facility is available. It's used in segmentectomy also. This is the probe of the open surgery. And the various companies are there. To identify additional tumors, you have to give the dye a few days before. Tumor retains the dye, and the rest of the liver already excretes the dye into the biliary system. So whatever highlights is the tumor, and that helps you identify between the regenerative nodule and tumor in doubtful cases. And when you remove the tumor, you can use the ICG on the specimen also, the camera on the specimen also, and that tells you the completeness of the resection. And REAM enhancement is in case of the metastasis and the intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. This is for the resection margin. This is the identification of the bile leakage. So there are so many more and more advantages and uses are coming up. And I see a lot of frequent use of this technology in near future, and it looks very promising. So these are the various papers increasing, advocating the use of ICG. Bilobar liver resection is at times necessary. This is the patient who had non-cirrhotic liver and large neuroendocrine tumor in both the lobes of the liver, huge lesions. And this patient had single stage bilobar liver resection, bilobar. This is the huge tumor on the left side. This is the huge tumor on the right side. However, the part of the liver that is removed is very small. So the volume loss is not much. So there is no functional disability. And this is the advantage of good preoperative imaging. So bilobar liver resection was done. These are the two cut surfaces seen. So whenever possible, both the sides of liver resections, if done in the same setting, prevents one more surgery. So results of liver resection, these are the various series, and it has morbidity varying from 3 to 5% and mortality of 3 to 5% and morbidity varying from about 14 to 22%. So meta-analysis shows such a wide range of morbidity, because what you call morbidity is very important. Even the wound infection is also morbidity. And the mortality can also vary depending on the mix of cases, more cirrhotic, more non-cirrhotic. The common complications are fever, hemorrhage, bile leak, liver failure, right pleural effusion, subphrenic collection. Intraperitoneal hemorrhage occurs in 4 to 10%, but lately this has reduced because of the good tools that we have now. Liver failure after hepatectomy also varies, and depending on the parameters you use to call it a liver failure. That's why such a huge range in meta-analysis. Now, bile leak is the Achilles heel, and that may delay the recovery of the patient. The incidence is 4 to 17%. The common causes are truncation of the bile duct, leakage of the bile duct at the anastomosis side, incomplete suturing, then the bile duct inappropriate surgical techniques. So in one of the retrospective analysis, the risk factors were multiple hepatectomies, traumatized liver surface, and intraoperative bleeding more than 700 ml. So these were found to be independent risk factors. So what is the take-home message? The take-home message is anatomical knowledge and preoperative assessments are extremely important. One has to know to read the images and interpret images preoperatively himself. You have to plan the surgery well. There should not be last-minute change in plan as far as possible. Liver resection is safe and very established technique nowadays. Morbidity, mortality, and transfusion requirements have improved remarkably. And adjuncts like downstaging, portal vein embolization, intraoperative ultrasound, Pringle's maneuver, hanging maneuver, ICG, bilobe or stage lobe resections, or even ALPS, all these things are now available, and when you use in a right patient, it increases the safety and resectability of the patient. Now I'll show a small video on left lateral segmentectomy. This was for colorectal liver metastasis. There was a small 2 centimeter nodule in segment 2. So this is the left triangular ligament being cut, and that will mobilize the left lateral segment. So you go all the way up to IVC, as close to the hepatic vein as possible. So that increases the mobility of the left lateral segment. You also divide the left hepatoduodenal ligament, hepatogastric ligament, and you see if there is accessory left hepatic vessel or hepatic artery there or not. However, with good quality CT scan, you know beforehand. This is the inflow now being, this is the umbilical fissure, and the scoring is being done, and now you identify segment 2 and segment 3 pedicles. You loop it. If you try to poke the right triangle, then you may end up making a hole, and it may bleed and may lose the beauty of surgery. And then once you loop it properly, transfix it. So after dealing with segment 3, now we are looping segment 2 pedicle. On specimen side, you can apply clips or even Hem-o-lok. You have to have a good clip applicator. So once the inflow is taken care of, there is line of demarcation identified. Then you mark the line of division. You may take a suture on either side of the line of demarcation or the line of division, and then start dividing. With the diaphragm, you don't go more than a couple of millimeters, otherwise you may have oozing.
Dr. Chirag, what do you use preferably dissecting?
I use QSAR.
QSAR, okay.
Yes. And this is the Pringles applied because there was a small tributary which was bleeding. And it makes the, so this is the initial couple of centimeters. You can use califlexure like this. And then this is the pedicles inside the parenchyma. You deal with them either with clips or suture. If you have a good assistant, it is very handy. So you both can tie the ligature on your side, and that's quicker also and easier also.
Here, here you can use a lot of methods like a surface suturing, pulling this, and this will give you better things.
Yeah. So this shows the CVP pressure of 5. So gradually you progress your transaction. All the portal pedicles that you come across are white. All the hepatic vein tributaries that you come across are usually bluish. And the portal pedicles are usually surrounded by a layer of fat, and that's why they are tougher also. But whatever you come across, you have to respect it and deal with it properly. Transfix it so you don't have to come back again. So you both, you and your assistant, give gentle traction on either side, and that opens the book. And this little transaction, see the now hepatic vein is coming in your view. So once you have dissected the hepatic vein all around, put a clamp. And you should cut the vein few millimeters above clamp so that you have enough space to suture the stump. And this is how it is removed. And this is a small video on caudate lobe resection in a case of hilar cholangiocarcinoma. The biliary resection and the lymphadenectomy has already been done. Now the segment 1 is being removed and only this part is shown here in the video. So as we know, caudate lobe is between the portal vein and IVC. So you have tributaries on both the sides. You have to remove the attach all the other structures. If in doubt, just apply clamp and apply sutures or ligatures. And separate the caudate lobe from the surrounding retroperitoneal attachments. This is the small tributaries going from IVC. They are being taken. As I showed in the diagram, there are 3 parts of caudate lobe. The one on the left, one between the IVC and portal vein, and the caudate process on the right side. So you have to remove all that to make sure that the whole caudate lobe is removed. The same area is being marked. The CUSA is being used. And if the blood pressure and IVC, CVP pressures are good, you really enjoy using CUSA. Now the caudate lobe is being delivered and only the final bit is remaining now. And this, it is very important to be patient at the end. The specimen is delivered. This is the gap and the whole area from where the caudate lobe came out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chirag. So I think extensively you covered everything. And now from everyone, there are the questions you can keep. There is a question like Dr. Soman from, sir, in the post-chemo, like FOLFOX metastatic colorectal carcinoma for right hepatectomy, right or left hepatectomy, any special change in your approach?
See, after chemotherapy, it's called post-chemotherapy liver. And you have to consider it as a chronic liver disease patient. Because the quality of this liver is like a fatty liver or a fibrous liver. The regenerative capacity of this liver is not good. The functionality of this liver is not good. So this liver could be friable, it could be edematous. So you have to handle this very carefully and you have to leave behind more volumes. Just 30% may not be enough. So you have to take into consideration all this. So all the precautions that you take care in cirrhosis or a chronic liver disease patients, you have to take care in these patients also, because and you have to time your resection also well from the time of the last chemo. So to make sure the counts and all have recovered and patient is in a good condition to tolerate it well.
So how much time you actually leave, Chirag, between the post-chemo and the resection?
3 to 6 weeks.
3 to 6
at
weeks.
least.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 things most important, like one is the functionality, second thing is the volumetric. I think that
Yes.
you have to be very careful about this resection, like post-chemo. He's having the next question also. What is your experience of venous air embolism without any major venous injury, but in a routine major hepatectomy?
Yes. See, usually it occurs when you have open vein or a open hepatic vein tributary and you don't realize it, and your CVP level is very low. And if this lasts for very long time, then only sizable significant air embolism occurs. But if you deal with your even if you injure one of the hepatic vein tributaries, if you just deal with it immediately, the most important thing is to first apply pressure onto it, prepare yourself, have your gadgets ready, all clamps, sutures, everything, and then you deal with it. So usually it's not a major problem in open surgery, but in laparoscopic surgery, one has to be careful. If your anesthetist keeps your CVP between 2 to 5 and your patient's position is Trendelenburg position and you are carefully dissecting, then I don't think this is an issue.
No,
So
it's
clinically
very
significant air embolism is not common.
Yeah, this is the open procedure. They say. I think this is more concern in the laparoscopic setting.
Yes.
This is a more careful that thing. And Dr. Soman is the third he giving. This is translating the data of minimal use of Pringles whenever for donor hepatectomy. Do you routinely use Pringles in hepatectomy for liver CA since it was standard procedure earlier? But I think that has been a lot have been discussed, like the Pringles maneuver. In my opinion, also that is like intermittent use. That is, I say, and when the like gadgets are not there, like so many vessel sealers, all these things, that era, that's a Pringles was so much important. What's your experience here?
See, the way I deal with it, I always have a sling around the porta, which we hardly ever use, but we always keep snugger ready, and we are mentally prepared to use Pringles if there is inadvertent slippage of the ligature or sudden bleeding or instability or some serosal tear or some rupture of the liver, any of this happens. Your assistant may not be experienced one, or something untoward if happens, then you have it ready. Or sometimes some livers are not good, they are very oozy, unexpectedly they are oozy, and you don't enjoy surgery. So in those cases, in cancers, then you don't struggle much, use Pringles and finish with the job. But always the effort is to avoid Pringles and do the surgery as neatly as possible and as anatomical as possible.
I think this is very rightly said, but many times in for logistics reasons, better to keep the vascular sling or like Snugger's methods ready and encircling, but don't use regularly. And that is the most important thing. And what about the things that's your assessment regarding like the oozing and all these things you do? How you deal with intraoperatively? Anything is like a Pringles maneuver, it is effective or no?
No, see,
Oozing,
oozing could be either because of poor technique, poor patient, or poor liver, or poor anesthetist. Okay, so anesthetist you can always shout at, so that is usually taken care of first, and you know whether it's a poor surgery or not. Okay, so if these two things are not there, and patient is cirrhotic and oozing unexpectedly, you ask your anesthetist to check the coagulation profile or give some coagulation products or blood products to, especially if there is some blood loss already there, and the patient's liver function was already borderline or the resection has been long. Because many times in a long surgery, even the hypothermia may set in, and it may lead to coagulopathy, which you may not realize. So as a part of general infrastructure in units where you are likely to do frequent major liver resections, you have to have good heating blankets or bear hugger or something like that to maintain core body temperature. You have to have good anesthetic equipments to measure good cardiac output and all those things. So you have to hardly ever use something extraordinary. But if you think that there is too much of a oozing, it is better to pack and give anesthetist some time and try to think what is going on. And
even the body warmer will also do in that way. Even the body warmer that we use for a long duration.
So, but that warms only the lower part. But many times you have that special sheet that you put on the operating table, and patient is.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. The whole table is covered with the body warmer. That's connected.
So that's what we use in transplant. So that's what we try to use if available.
Mostly, that is the preparation is important, and intraoperative, that is coordination with anesthetist, like low CBP and what you are telling. This is the warm saline infusion and keeping the body warm.
Yes.
These are the important things they have to do.
Yes. And many times the monitor may say whatever may be the IV, central venous pressure. But by looking at the IVC, you get an idea whether it is very full or very empty. Okay. So if there may be a false reading for some reason, so you may ask your anesthetist to zero it properly and adjust the transducer to make sure that you have the right reading.
So what CBP you maintain? That is another question related to that also.
My aim or my anesthetist's aim is usually to bring it between 2 to 5.
Okay.
2 to 5, yeah. Even many outsiders are keeping also 0, but this is a difficult. Yeah, I think that is a 2 to 5 will be the ideal.
Yeah. So if you aim for 2, then if at all it is lower, it goes up to 0. It doesn't become minus. So the chances of air embolism is not there.
There's another thing, like you told, that is a entry hanging method for the large right-sided tumor and putting the sling posteriorly. That one way that is challenging, that is when you will go like in between. That is mostly laparoscopic things, it will be easier. Otherwise, you had the sling between like IVC and liver. How often is this? Like suppose
in that case, see, otherwise also you need a good exposure in this patient because the tumor is huge. And I would use either Mercedes-Benz incision or the inverted T-shape incision. You have a good placement of Thompson's retractor. Then you go and divide the falciform ligament all the way up to IVC. You dissect the suprahepatic IVC. And you try to develop a groove between the left and middle trunk and the right side. And once you have that groove, you aim that groove from below. Okay. So it's like creating a tunnel that we do in case of Whipple's operation, you know, that you work from both the sides. So here also you work from below, and usually in that line, usually there are no tributaries. Most of the tributaries are either on the left or the right side. That one line of about ½ centimeter is without any tributary in front of it. So you have to aim for that plane. And even if you hit one small ones, that will stop bleeding just because of the weight of the tumor and the liver. Okay. If you are not getting plane, if it is not developing good plane, better to use hydrodissection. You put a small tube and under with the use of asepto syringe, you push the saline, warm saline. And so that will little bit develop a good plane. You keep chasing it and it takes about 10-15 minutes at the most. But you don't deviate from that line. Your direction should not change just because it is difficult. If you maintain your target, usually you reach your destination. And once you have that tube in place, your life is extremely easy. And once you have put that in place, then you try to bring it in front of the pedicle. So then you divide the caudate lobe and then you bring it in front of the pedicle. So then you have only liver in front of that tube, and in front of that tube you keep dividing without worrying about IVC. Then you aim for only that tube. And if you do that, then both the sides of the lever will open like a book and will fall apart. Then you take care of the all the tributaries on the right side, and that will separate liver from the IVC. And at the last, only structure that is remaining is right hepatic vein. And in case it is difficult, you just fire a stapler there.
Yeah, that's a good.
But at one point, Chirag, you told that you don't like staplers being used for hepatic veins, but sometimes
for transaction.
For transaction.
Yeah.
Okay, for transaction and for inflow.
Yeah.
I think like
but quite often for hepatic veins, probably staplers they work very
better.
Yeah, because it's a very difficult angle, and it really makes your life easy.
Yeah.
And
in fact,
if the clamp slips there, then it's very difficult to catch hold of everything, and you may lose several liters in no time. So
even for a laparoscopic radical cholecystectomy, sometimes we just apply a stapler at the middle hepatic vein, so it makes life much easier, comfortable at that point.
Yes.
True.
There's another question from a new tune, that is, sir, your experience for emergency hepatectomy for rupture SCC that are resectable, like in intraoperatively ruptured.
Rupture FCC, resuscitate the patient, take patient to angiography suite, do the embolization, stop the bleeding. Once the patient's blood supply has stopped, because it is the hepatic artery which is bleeding, once you have done the embolization, the bleeding has stopped, then you have enough time to resuscitate the patient, stabilize the patient, get the blood products, evaluate the patient, get a good contra-CT done. And once that is done, then you do the planned resection in another couple of days' time, do the lavage and remove the resection and the part of the liver that is necessary from the oncological point of view.
Then so there is no emergency hepatectomy for the ruptured SCC.
It's not necessary, because then you may end up violating oncological principles.
Yeah.
And this is equally effective and more safe. Angiography.
Okay. This is chemoembolization. Suppose
this is just embolization. Yeah. This is not chemoembolization.
Just
embolization.
This is just embolization.
Emergency embolization.
Yeah, that time you need a very expert interventional radiologist.
Yes.
Suppose it is not available.
Even your cardiologist can do a good job. If your interventional radiologist is not available, you just guide your cardiologist to enter that particular branch, and you may embolize the main right hepatic artery, and you will be safe. But usually now most centers have interventional radiologists available, so you don't have to rely on cardiologists.
Another important point that is like the utility of the intraoperative ultrasound. How much essential, like in tumor resection, and suppose without any intraoperative ultrasound?
See, when we do major liver resection, we don't keep intraoperative ultrasound ready, but we inform radiology department that between this time to this time we may borrow a machine for half an hour. Okay, so if we think that we may need it to localize a pedicle or some vascular structure, or to find out some extra lesions and all, then 10-15 minutes before we call for the machine, do the job and send it back. But usually it's not necessary because of the good quality preoperative imaging.
But when you are planning for the segmental resection, that time intraoperative ultrasound will be useful.
Yes, so that's why you have to keep it ready. And if you are finding it difficult to locate the pedicle, or when you are not sure how far you are, you better put a probe and find out how far are you from the target vessel that you are looking for.
So one or two ICG that will be more complementary also.
Exactly.
Another question is, what is the sequence of vascular control, like hepatic artery, portal vein, hepatic vein, when you have the hepatic dissection? What is the sequence?
Sequence is a portal vein, hepatic artery, then transection, and at the end hepatic vein.
Okay, but before transaction, you have to loop the hepatic vein, keeping the vascular control. Not
It's not.
necessary.
If it's easy, you do it, or you just leave it for the end.
Okay, so outflow control is not to be done. I mean, it's not mandatory to do it.
Yes,
Before,
but when you are mobilizing the right lobe, you dissect the hepatic vein, and if you can do it easily without manipulating the right lobe too much, then you better put a sling around it. Otherwise, when you identify it from within, then it's easy to do it from both the sides.
Okay.
Yeah, at times it's like a sling, Dr. Chirag, that will be better because when you clamp, then they to identify that vein intrahepatic, this is will be easier. Then you can have the
Yes.
method better.
Yeah, but for
That's
the
what we
outflow,
do usually.
both
Yeah.
are fine. Extrahepatic and intrahepatic within parenchyma and outside parenchyma. It is individual preference and it may vary case to case.
Yeah.
That applies same for the left side as well, for the left lobe. Okay.
Yes.
Another any difference you are seeing? You are the child like it hepatoma in children, encasing like middle hepatic vein or right hepatic vein.
See, the principle remains same whether it is for hepatoblastoma or hepatocellular carcinoma. But in child, what is important that the amount of blood loss which you consider insignificant in adult is extremely significant in child. So the surgeons who mainly operate on adults tend to underestimate the blood loss in child. So that's very, very important take-home message that if you are not regularly operating on very small kids, because some of these hepatoblastoma kids are very small, less than 2-year-old, and most of these livers are post-chemotherapy livers.
Yes.
Okay, so extra blood loss not only hampers the hemodynamics and increases the risk, but also worsens the post-operative hepatic function of the residual liver. So it is very important that blood loss is also given too much of a consideration in child.
That's why the post chemotherapy hepatic resection, that is the preparation will be very, very important.
Yes, and timing.
This is the timing and priming also. Priming. And
so many. I mean, Somen, do you have any questions? Any further questions?
Already have put the questions.
Somen, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can ask directly.
Yeah, you can ask directly to Chirag. No problem.
Hello, Somen.
Okay, sir. It was a nice presentation, sir. Sir, one last simple practical thing I have asked. The anesthetist, if doesn't cooperate, what you do?
So you better ask your wife. Itasa is there?
Yes, sir. She is in anesthesia, sir.
So next time you change your anesthetist.
Okay. Sir, anytime you use IVC clamping, if in case of certain cases, if massive bleeding is there, or you have in spite of inflow control during anterior approach hepatic resection, any role, is it helpful?
Yeah, in such case also you just loop the infrahepatic IVC looped.
Okay, sir.
But don't use it. And if at all needed, just lift the sling and put a clamp. And try to remove it as early as possible. But it gives you few minutes to identify which place is bothering you, and you then have a opportunity to apply artery forceps or a clamp there, and you put a couple of sutures and then you can remove the clamp. So Pringles and infrahepatic loop and all those things you always keep ready.
Yeah.
And you have it color coded so you don't have to and make sure it doesn't tangle around each other, and put it away from the main operative area, and then make sure that you don't forget to remove it at the end of the surgery.
Okay.
Yeah, but at times if you will pre-operate will assess that there is a possibility of the IVC infiltration or things, so better to pre-operatively loop it, keep it there, And at times, suppose you are suspecting that time in partial occlusion, that will be helpful.
I think it adds more onto the confidence of the surgeon than anything else. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
as and when required, you can certainly use it. And one more thing, in a biliary cystadenoma in the left lobe liver, does your approach change, Chirag? Any way you want resection? Any way you change your approach? Nothing.
No, I do the same thing.
Same thing. Okay, fine. And what about parenchyma preserving resections? What's your take on that?
See, parenchyma preserving surgery you do in neuroendocrine tumors or colorectal metastases and all, where you see, in case of HCC, it is the precancerous liver. That's why you remove a lot of liver or you subject them to transplant. But in case of colorectal liver metastasis or neuroendocrine tumor, you remove the tumor and the small bit of the normal liver around it, and you do multiple resections and leave behind the rest of the liver and let it grow.
Okay.
So during my training in UK, I saw one patient in follow-up who was under treatment of that unit for about 11 years. So she had first 2 wedge resections for colorectal liver metastasis, 2 wedge resections on the right side. Then she had completion right hepatectomy. Then she had left lateral segmentectomy. So she was then living only on segment 4, which had grown enormously because there was enough opportunity for it to grow.
That's the beauty of liver.
Yes.
That's why the like in multiple
Yeah. So such
metastatic.
examples are very encouraging and helps you preserve parenchyma more for other patients also.
That's known as the sequential liver resection. Mostly they're
Yeah.
doing the colorectal metastasis. One Uri doctor also, Dr. Manas must be knowing this. He was having the same thing. He has done this like sequential liver resection in MD Anderson. He's only more than 5 years. Like in the where it was like started with the tumors. They have done the same like sequential liver resection.
Or you can combine RF ablation at the time of surgery. So one side RF ablation for small ones.
There is a good question here, Dr. Chirag. What is the experience like in multiple liver mets with hepatic resection versus RFA?
No, if as far as possible, I try to remove them. But if some lesions which are not included in the resections, those who are deep down or those who are on the other side of the liver, which I am not going to address this time, so rather than leaving them alone, I address them radiofrequency ablation on table.
This is an intrap that will be better already.
Yeah, so the interventional radiologist joins you, targets that tumor, ablates it, and then you follow the growth of the rest of the liver and how these tumors which are ablated behave postoperatively in subsequent CT scans.
This is a surgical cancer related things I am asking. Like what the sequence you are seeing, like you will go for the like multiple one lobe metastasis, you will go for the chemotherapy or same setting resection, like primary colon with liver.
See, if it is right-sided colon, and if the patient's general condition is good, I don't mind adding major liver resection in the same setting. But if it is left-sided colon, if it is a very minor liver resection, I may do at the same time. Otherwise, I just treat the primary and then give chemo and then...
disease volume depends.
Yes. But but if the left side is not obstructing, the volume of liver metastasis is huge but still resectable. If we wait, if we are likely to lose control, then I occasionally may advise to go for liver resection first. But this scenario is not very common.
Yeah, this is the thing.
There is another question from Dr. Naveen Jain. That if you encounter IV cell laceration during resection, what's how you manage that? Have you encountered any? Any IVC laceration during resection?
Rather than laceration, slippage of the clamp or inadvertent you nick with your CUSA or basically too much of a traction on the liver and you avulse one of the hepatic veins.
Yeah.
These things do occur. The best thing is to put a mop and slowly withdraw it and identify that area, lift it with the tissue forceps
Yeah.
and put a clamp, side clamp. And once you have done that, you take 4-Proline and suture it. And take your time and neatly suture it. Once you do that, you have remove the clamp and you are back to normal. Then let your pulse settle first. The patient's pulse will settle down.
But settling your pulse is more important first.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Now, Dr. Chirag, I am coming into the transplant
Yes.
or in a tumors.
Yes.
Like, what are the indications you are putting yourself like asking for the liver transplant? And,
Yes. See, basically, there are two issues. One, whether it's a living donor liver transplant or a cadaver liver transplant, and what is your unit policy for oncological inclusion of these patients. Now, in Gujarat, for cadaver organ allocation, patients beyond Milan are not given liver.
Okay.
So, for those who are beyond Milan, have either no transplant option or only living donor liver transplant option. Now, if we talk about living donor liver transplant, because it's a dedicated graft for this patient, people have gone beyond lots of limits. The most commonly used criteria is UCSF criteria, where the largest tumor up to 6.5 centimeter, total tumor volume up to 8 centimeter. No extra hepatic liver metastasis and no major vascular involvement. So they give good result, but people have gone for living donor liver transplant even beyond this, accepting that at the most it may not work and there may be recurrence, but a donor is ready to give liver and the family is ready to take that chance of recurrence. So in that case, people have included patients with tumor as big as 10 centimeter, 11 centimeters. But in those cases, it is better to treat these patients with chemoembolization, SBRT, or even radioembolization preoperatively, shrink the tumor, see the biology of the tumor, and if the disease remains stable, alpha fetoprotein falls, then you go ahead and do the living donor liver transplant.
Okay. Another question is from Dr. Bhavik. Sir, your experience with liver resection in patients with extrahepatic portal vein obstruction like portal cavernoma.
Portal cavernoma patient needing liver resection.
yeah.
See, it's a very, very difficult proposition. And it can really bleed in porta itself. There is no identifiable portal vein, so there is no obvious inflow. So a major anatomical resection in this patient may be difficult, but wedge resection is fine. Or if at all, if you do surgery, then you have to accept the extra risk of bleeding. But I personally have never come across such situation and have not done surgery, liver resection surgery in a patient with portal vein cavernoma.
Like portal cavernoma with extrahepatic portal vein obstruction. It's difficult if it is an intrahepatic extension, then that would actually definitely a difficult thing.
Yes.
So Chirag, what's your message to the younger colleagues who are interested to start liver resections?
Yes. So first and foremost, this is a this is something which has excellent future. With increasing incidence of NASH, NASH-related tumors and problems are going to increase. So this is something better they pursue it. So the message is you have to have good knowledge of anatomy. You need to know how to read your own CT scans along with radiologists. You have to have good assistant. During your initial resections, make sure you have somebody, some phone a friend available in a nearby vicinity, that if you run into trouble, they can come. Better to have a senior colleague or a good assistant or a good friend of your caliber assisting you for initial few resections. It is better to do few safe resections initially rather than to show the heroism. Laparoscopic liver resection is the future. At least for oncology, it has given a very, very promising thing. For donor, it has established role for left lateral segment donor. For right liver donors or a left liver donor, still it is evolving, but the way technology is improving, the way the robo and its accessory are improving, the way things like ICG is coming in way, intraoperative ultrasounds, laparoscopic CUSA, laparoscopic vascular clamps. So with all this, minimally invasive liver surgery is going to be here in next. So whoever, not the new generation, even people like me and you, any of us who are going to be in practice for more than 10 years, we have to learn this.
Definitely.
Okay, so Madhav, what is your suggestion? Any addition you want to make? Any further suggestion on that? Even those who have got experience also should start learning liver resections. That's the most in thing.
What Dr.
Chirag is telling, yeah.
Dr. Chirag is telling rightly, but the future, because there is a very promising future in the liver surgery, like transplant, like with malignancy, and even trauma, which we missed here, that trauma. This liver surgery is definitely there, and they like if you're young, I think most of the time you have to choose a team. What Dr. Chirag is telling, not like every day you can do the surgery with a new one, or every day you can do go and do like heroic say I will do the liver surgery. But like you have your own mindset and having a good team. You have to choose a good team and have a positive mind.
I think like Madhav,
Madhav,
I think we are in a better place to form a team and start resecting regularly, so that before you embark upon a transplant program, I think because you should have enough of good experience and resections. That's probably much more required before the transplant program starts up. So why not we start making a team and start resecting Madhav at AIIMS regularly?
This is the only thing we are doing already, and we were doing with the pediatric surgery, everything expressed there. But the COVID has given.
Forget COVID. Post-COVID, I mean,
post-COVID, we are having the OTA, modular OTA, everything is there.
Everything is there. We will make we have an excellent anesthesia support. I mean, excellent, fantastic anesthesia team.
Everything is there. Very good.
Everything is there. So only thing is the need is the willpower and just to make a team effort.
It is there. It is there, and it is going also.
It is going also. And we want to take it further. And we have good friends also with us who can always chip in and I mean, they will motivate us to embark upon for going further.
Yeah, people are already started out the things together.
Absolutely.
And this is a very nice discussion. Only thing, this is the trauma we missed. That is, we don't have the much of it.
True. I mean, everything was discussed in detail about resections. Chirag went into all nook and corner of liver resections. Somen, you have any other queries?
Sir, last query.
Sure, you have many more. Please, most welcome.
CAGB. Yeah, that is the very good question he is putting. Like gallbladder with a hilar block, type 2, without vascular involvement, common in Eastern India, especially. Madhu sir, Chirag sir, your experience on right extended hepatectomy, is it justifiable?
Yes.
Chirag, you tell, I'll tell.
Yeah. You answer that better.
You see, from a surgical oncology point of view, I always give surgery most important if R0 resection is possible and it's resectable, and within your that is the criteria, you have to go. And we have done also in CHGB. This is a definitely better survival rate. But simultaneously, how many cases we can see like that? This is with liver resection. The simultaneously we are seeing so much of lymph node metastasis. This is with nodal metastasis like the extended resection as an OA, but isolated like this. What you are asking the question, that will definitely have the better survival, because surgical R0 resection for surgical things, CA gallbladder always have the better survival.
This is the situation where you may need preoperative portal vein embolization and have a good volume of left lateral segment, and then you are better off doing right extended hepatectomy with resection of extrahepatic biliary tree, lymph node adenectomy, and
I think hilar cholangiocarcinoma itself also will be another interesting session to with
total full course.
Yeah, that will be full full blown discussion on hilar itself. Much more interesting to delve into that area as well. So anyway, any further questions? You have so many.
Thank you, sir. It was an enlightenment.
Anyone people?
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other question? Dr. Samuel.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it is extended so much. I like almost 2 hours.
We have got so many guests also with us. Our colleagues from different countries, they have also joined us. If you have any other questions, you may be visible, and you can ask directly also. It's absolutely no problem.
I think Dr. Chirag has covered so much now. There's a question. So extensively covered.
Extensively covered, and all is met with. So it was a fantastic evening, Chirag and Madhav. You both made the evening really enjoyable. It was enriching, enlightening. And I think all participants must have taken a good message. And in fact, I myself got enriched quite a lot. So it is stimulating and motivating as well. So thank you, Dr. Chirag Desai, and thank you, Dr. Madhavanand Kar. Both of you, thank you very much for accepting my request and coming and joining, spending your time, energy, and your enthusiasm as well. That's also again motivating that both Chirag and Madhav were very much interested that how things will go on smoothly, and it went off fantastic. We really enjoyed, all of us enjoyed. We had excellent discussion, lot of interactions. So thank you very much. I think we'll surely meet sometime next. And next week, we are having another interesting session on pancreas. That's on the pancreatic infected necrosis of pancreas that will be dealt by Dr. G.V. Rao. And pancreatic pseudosis management laparoscopically, that will be dealt by me. So that will be again, should be another interesting session. So all of you are again invited to be same time, every week, same time, Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. So let's be here, spend 1 hour, 1.5 hours, the COVID time. That will be good for spending time, and it's enriching as well.
Yes.
So one thing I am telling you, Manas, was you have done the fantastic, this is like a academy.
No, I mean,
and I didn't know before also. And last time last 2-3 sessions I attended.
Yeah. Please join us every time.
This is the best thing. Yeah.
I think this is personal and one-to-one interaction. That's the best thing.
That is right. And discussion is so good. Like we can never feel that like already past 2 hours.
Absolutely a friendly discussion. We don't feel that conference atmosphere. That is absolutely different atmosphere. We are absolutely a friendly discussion, chit chat in the evening. So I mean, everybody enjoys that. Madhav, you please keep joining every Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. We have some or other interesting surgical topic. It might not interest, all the topics might not interest you.
I will find out. You keep me in the loop. This I will see
sure,
that.
Definitely. So 7:30 p.m. Tuesday, every week, keep your time free. So many keep joining also. I'll be happy, and all participants, all of you are most welcome to join us and give your feedback also how we can improve upon our whole presentation. And the week next to next, I've got an excellent speaker from Argentina. That's Dr. Guillermo. He'll be talking on magnets in surgery. That's really fantastic. I heard him once in some conference. I have requested him, and he has also accepted my request. He'll be the first international speaker in this forum. So he'll be talking on how magnets can change the surgical scenario and change our life. So that will be very interesting. That will be coming up on 20th of October, maybe. So I'll be keep informing. And Madhav, you can also join the Surgical Academia group, where you can keep yourself updated as well, because we are.
Not only team, also I am also interested in other surgical tips.
I will sure add you onto the group. So not that only surgical oncology, other things also.
No. Yeah,
absolutely.
Any surgical tips that will be helpful for anything.
Definitely.
Manas, you also need big applause for making this possible, and you have really gathered right-minded people.
No, it's actually a big pleasure, and the most pleasurable thing is to get united, share, and get enriched also. That is most important. So in fact, a lot of our residents, many younger colleagues, lot of elder colleagues also, they are really motivating that you continue this effort, and it's going on, and we are all enjoying. So let's continue. Okay.
It is really appreciable.
Yeah. Okay.
I also really enjoyed today evening.
Yeah. It was really enjoyable. And Chirag, you keep joining even if you do not have your presentation, doesn't matter. Keep joining every week.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. So thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Madhav. Thank you, all participants. So let's meet again tomorrow, next week, same time, 7:30 p.m. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.